Welcome, Operative. Have a seat. As you know, the Lemnis project is going live. Today I've got a pre-launch briefing for you to teach you everything you need to know before you go through the gate. Two things before we get started. First, the data in this briefing is based off the beta simulations that we ran back in July. Some things might have changed out there between the beta and launch, but most of this intel should carry over. Second thing, this briefing's chock full of intel. If you need to skip to certain parts, use the chapters and timestamps down below. Now enough chit chat, let's get to work. You'll be leading a team of 7 operatives to various off-world sites in order to secure mission critical objectives. There's 4 types of missions you'll be sent on, and it's high time you get familiar with them. For seek and destroy missions, your team will find and destroy a pair of resistors, or defend them. This one's simple enough, just shoot through the armored plates and damage that precious little core on the inside. Domination missions, you'll need to fight for control of 3 to 4 particle accelerators. Just shoot them to get them spinning in the right direction, but remember, your enemies can capture them back. If you can hit that glowing ring in the center, you'll capture the point faster. Some missions will have you retrieve XM, exotic matter. It'll be up to your team to grab those objectives and return them to your gate, but you'll have to be fast, as your enemies will try to do the same. Finally, some missions just end up being a bloody deathmatch. Kill the enemies to secure the off-world site. Simple. Before we get any further, let me introduce you to the team. First up, we've got Kapitan, leader of the group. She's no nonsense, doesn't muck about. She's got a trusted auto rifle, which is accurate over all but the longest of ranges. Her gadget's a classic frag. It explodes on impact with enough punch to erase enemies and break shields. She's got average speed and the standard 100 health. Next up, Toxin, an environmentalist gone spec ops. Her Tox cannon spits out compressed pollutants that'll poison any surface it touches. If you think the initial sting is bad, wait around and find out how much worse it gets. Only Toxin with her special suit can pass over her toxic pools without taking some serious damage. Keep in mind, enemy toxins from other timelines are also immune to her poison over time effect. Her gadget is a displacer. Lob it through the air and teleport to where it lands. She's a bit slower and a bit tankier with 110 health, but thanks to her displacer, she can get around the map with surprising speed. Not to mention, she can teleport up to ledges inaccessible to other operatives. Next is Rush, and I'll do this fast in his honor. He's got dual shredders, rapid fire machine pistols, good and close range. He's also got kinetic boosters, which give him a quick burst of speed, and when used with jump pads, can make him fly. He's real fast, but he's only got 80 health, the only operative that can be one-shot by a body shot from the team's sniper. Speak of the devil, Striker's up next. We won't get into his criminal history, because we don't have all day, but all you need to know is he's a crack shot with his zero-drop rifle. One shot to the head will drop any operative. 2 shots will break any shield. His ripple ability will slow down time, letting him line up the perfect headshot even in the midst of a chaotic battlefield. But watch out, he's only got 2 shots before he needs a fresh mag. He's got standard speed and health, and is best deployed towards the end of the round when there's plenty of targets to choose from. Speaking of targets, you won't find a bigger target than Deathblow. He's the slowest of the bunch, but has the most health at 120. The reason he's so slow is because he's carrying nothing short of an arsenal on his back. His Eradicator shoots rockets that explode on impact, blasting everything nearby, friends and foes. His gadgets are proximity mines, because he wasn't sporting enough explosives already. They're best used when placed along the path of an operative who's already deployed, but they're good for slowing anyone down. Vendetta's up next. Amazing engineer, even better operative. Her weapon of choice is the scattergun, a classic shotgun that deletes enemies up close. Her gadget is the attack pod. She can place 5 of them around the map, which will auto-track and shoot targets that get in range. Pro tip, Place them mid-air and they'll track targets in all directions, not just in front of them. She's got decent speed and the standard 100 health. I'd end it there, but the team insists I also introduce KARL. He's just a bipedal security AI, but the team has grown quite fond of him. He carries a precision beam weapon, which deals a continuous flow of damage if you can keep his beam on target. His gadget is a protection orb. He can attach it to allies or surfaces to protect them from incoming damage. Heads up, if his shield lands on an enemy's shield, both the shields will be destroyed. Also, turrets won't shoot at targets behind shields. KARL has standard health and speed, but he can jump higher because of his bionic legs. Alright, you know the mission, you know your team. Now it's time to go over strategic principles. Out beyond the gate, strategy is just as important as skill. These principles will be the building blocks that you use as the foundation for your strategies in the field. The first principle is blind utility. Blind utility teaches us that some operatives are better suited than others to create value with little to no information. Essentially, operatives with weapons and gadgets that require low precision can be used more effectively with less information than abilities requiring precision and timing. For example, Vendetta is a high blind utility operative. Her attack pods will auto-target enemies in future rounds, even though Vendetta cannot see these targets yet on her turn. Deathblow and Toxin have moderate blind utility. Their proximity mines and toxic pools will damage enemies that get close in future rounds. Striker is an example of a low blind utility operative. His zero-drop rifle requires high precision and timing, and his ripple ability has no utility besides supporting his high precision attack. In conclusion, operatives with high blind utility can get more value out of earlier rounds than operatives with low blind utility. Operatives with medium blind utility can be used for area denial to slow down enemies or to funnel future enemies away from certain paths. Finally, characters with low blind utility should be saved for later rounds or not used at all. Our second principle is that of escalating value. This principle teaches us that the later an operative's turn is taken, the more valuable it is. Together, blind utility and escalating value make up the yin and yang of our strategic principles, and they help to inform us of which order we should deploy our operatives. Why does escalating value work? It's simple. First, a player cannot be reasonably expected to predict actions in future rounds. In later turns, more information is available than in earlier turns. The more information you have when planning a turn, the more likely you'll execute a high-value turn. Finally, in later turns, you are able to directly affect a greater number of past turns. So, for example, Striker and Deathblow are good examples of characters to play in later rounds, as one turn from either in the late game could terminate several enemy operatives. When using a high maximum value character in later rounds, you want to make sure to keep them protected from enemy damage dealers. Extremely high utility operatives can also be good for later rounds, such as KARL with his shield. All operatives are better in later rounds. The hard part is choosing which operative to play earlier and have a worse round. In conclusion, an operative taking a turn in a later round can have a more valuable turn than an identical operative in an earlier round. Operatives with lower maximum value should be played in earlier rounds. Operatives with higher maximum value, quicker time to kill, and a longer range of influence should be played in later rounds. Operatives lacking utility, having only damage dealing potential, should be played in later rounds. Escalating value is part of the second player or defender's advantage. Our third principle is that health equals time, and this works because it takes time to kill an operative. An operative's remaining health represents a time cost to deal with them. Time spent killing an operative is time that cannot be spent moving at full speed and completing other objectives. An operative following an identical operative cannot do everything the first operative did while countering them. For example, player 1 uses Rush, captures Alpha, returns Alpha, captures Bravo, and barely returns Bravo in one loop. If player 2 uses Rush to counter player 1's Rush, the extra time spent killing player 1's Rush will mean player 2's Rush cannot return Bravo, though he does stop player 1's Rush from capturing any objectives. Some notes about our third principle. When going first, make high efficiency turns that will force your opponent to make low efficiency turns in order to counter you. This principle relies upon making efficient first turns with no room for error. The benefit from this principle is minimized versus low time to kill opposing operatives. This principle is part of the attacker's or first player's advantage. Our fourth principle is overkill damage. The premise is that a target is not necessarily eliminated if you reduce their health to 0. The reason for this is that if the opponent hasn't used their KARL, then the target could be protected with a shield in a future round, blocking part of the damage required to kill them. If an ally dealt damage to the target, and that ally is neutralized in a future round, the missing damage from the missing ally could be enough to save the target. The conclusions for this principle are that if the opponent has already used KARL and no other allies damage the target, deal enough damage to kill. No overkill damage is necessary. If the opponent hasn't used their KARL, always deal overkill damage to the target. If an ally participated in damaging a target, always deal overkill damage to the target. Can be advantageous to keep KARL until later in the round if the opponent isn't dealing overkill damage. A couple of notes on this one. A target can be an opponent's operative, turret, or an objective site. Remember, KARL shields can be dropped on the ground to protect objective sites, not just attached to enemy operatives. Our fifth principle is split damage. It can be better to destroy targets with partial damage dealt from multiple operatives rather than full damage dealt from a single operative. Reasons for this is it's faster. Multiple operatives means higher DPS. The average disruption to your operative's turns is lower. No one operative needs to spend all their time and focus to kill an objective. Instead, several operatives yield a small amount of their time and focus. Also, split damage makes it harder to counter. Even if your opponent stops one of your attackers, the others will still finish the job. Conclusions. Long range, low damage operatives can share the responsibility to take down targets. Targets that only present a shooting window briefly to multiple operatives don't necessarily need to be chased down by any one operative. Hitting the same target from multiple attackers and angles makes defending that target very, very difficult. As far as notes, it's necessary for operatives to deal overkill damage for this principle, lest one of them falls. Now we move on to some of our defensive principles. Principle number 6, Stagger Pathing. The premise is that running the same path at the same time as an ally is dangerous. Reasons for this is that several operatives have abilities to deal area of effect damage, which can be used to kill multiple grouped allies simultaneously. Paths that are obviously used by many operatives present good turret and toxin puddle placement opportunities. So, to use this principle, don't run the same path as an ally at the same time. If the same path must be used, stagger the times that allies traverse the path to minimize AoE damaging abilities. Also, don't group up too closely with allies. Some notes. In a specific scenario where the opponent's Deathblow, Kapitan, and Vendetta have already been used, it can be advantageous to run the same path simultaneously with allies to minimize the damage dealt of turrets along the path. Turrets can only shoot one target at a time, so a group running past a turret will suffer less damage than an equal number of individuals running one at a time. Beware grouping in anticipation of turret placement, because Vendetta has a shotgun which can kill close group targets quickly. Good stagger pathing makes it difficult for opponents to identify opportunities for multi-kills. The seventh principle is called split pathing. The basic premise is that you need to use the width of the battlefield so a single enemy operative cannot affect all of your operatives. This principle essentially counters the split damage principle. By spreading your operatives around the map, you force your opponent to make tough choices about which of your operatives they want to stop. A good way to test if you're using split pathing properly is to see how many of your operatives are simultaneously visible from an enemy vantage point. If you can see more than 2 operatives, you may want to split up your operatives. By attacking different parts of the map, you minimize the value generated by enemy turrets. If you split push objectives properly, enemy operatives will need to choose between one of 3 things: either focusing one of your pushes, wasting time moving between objectives to defend multiple pushes, or they'll have to put themselves in an exposed vantage point to cover multiple objectives, making them very easy to kill. The 8th principle is shadow boxing. Essentially, you need to pretend like you're fighting opponents that don't exist. Opponent snipers and other operatives may be deployed to shoot at your current operative in a future round. Opponents will travel paths you have access to now in the future. At all times, use cover and dodge shots as if you're under fire, even if you're the only operative on the field. When otherwise unoccupied, deal damage to common paths that enemies might take in the future. This principle can be ignored if you're taking the last turn of the round. Our last 2 principles are pretty straightforward. Number 9, have a backup plan. You need to plan beyond the first part of your turn. That way, if you fail to execute the first part of your turn, you know exactly where to go and what to do next. Mistakes happen, but don't let an early mistake lead to panic and waste the rest of your turn. Always have a backup plan. Finally, our 10th principle is keep it simple. If you forget all the other principles, don't sweat it, just keep it simple. Remember, simple plans are easier to pull off than complex ones, so don't overcomplicate. Alright, that's the end of this pre-launch briefing. Stay tuned to this channel for more strategy and tactics videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the future.